I love my country, but the elite class in America is reaching fall of Rome level decadence.
I've seen much of the rest of the world. It is brutal and cruel and dark. Rome is the light.
Yet you have never been there. You have not seen what it has become.
There's a growing distrust among common people of the elite classes, of scientists, of the Department of Justice, of Hollywood celebrities, of music executives. There are various reasons for this, and it's hard to generalize. I don't want to label everyone in these circles as a bad person. But the decadence and the abuse of that power of the public trust is so well known at this point that Americans just don't look at these people the same. If you trade royalty, the aristocratic classes, you just wind up replacing them with celebrities. People need somebody to look up to, someone to admire, and this is what Hollywood, although I think their celebrity is less well earned than some of the aristocratic classes of the old days. But if you grow up like me, somewhere between the 50s and the 90s, 2000s, you probably have some sort of respect for the cultural elite in the United States. And yet, even though the problem has always been there, it's becoming so well known. One of the terrible things about social media is that everybody has a voice, and not all of us use that voice responsibly or well. But one of the great things about social media is that everyone has a voice, and information that would be squashed or silenced or smothered by the elite classes can now be spread around by common people like you and me. And now we see exactly who these people are. Though I don't want to generalize, I'm sure there are decent people there who work in Hollywood, who work in the music industry, who work in politics, definitely decent scientists out there. The reality is, among our professors, our institutions, our cultural elites, the coastal liberals, there's corruption, there's decadence, there are things that people knew about that they covered up, and then those same people very much want to lecture the common person in the middle of the country. Whether you're black or white, educated, didn't finish high school, construction worker, white collar, there are people in this country who feel so disconnected from you and feel in some ways that they're your betters. To the point where, though we have a democratic republic, there's a sort of ruling class. People who get into universities that you and I can never get into, who are literally born into wealth and privilege. And these things aren't evil in and of themselves. I think what I've noticed is most conservative, moderates, and even liberal people I know don't hate rich people. But they're suspicious of people depending on how they get that wealth, how they keep that wealth. And those elites who get into the key universities, who take the most prestigious pulpits in America and the cultural institutions, people don't like being talked down to. And it seems to me that these people have talked down to us and talked down to us. And yet when we find out, when the rubber meets the road, what they're really all about, it ain't pretty. This will be a short video. Here's just a few examples, just to refresh your memory, on why people don't trust the elites. From Hollywood, to the music industry, to even our science institutions, to the Justice Department, just to refresh your memory. And then I'll bring it back to a single point. Privileged, wealthy, famous people who cheat to get their children into universities that you could never get into, more than likely, and give them another leg up on an already privileged life. Heads of universities, Ivy League, who complain about their situation, and yet they're at the top of Ivy League universities, or get into Ivy League universities, will blame a coal miner for having too much privilege. That's a complicated one, but at the end of the day, it's not. And those people can't make basic moral statements that should be made by any decent person. From the untold countless people in Hollywood who knew about the abuse of people like Corey Feldman, the Sean Combs situation, who knew about it, Harvey Weinstein, and covered it up, or just turned away. And those people still work in Hollywood. Now we're told to believe in science, which I do. I think science is an useful tool, though I don't think it should be taken to be a belief system or ideology. We're told to believe the science and that science is true whether you like it or not. The problem with science is scientists are human beings, and human beings can be influenced by money, by pressure, by fear, all the same things that you and I are subject to.
WHO considered Taiwan's membership. Hello? With the
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I couldn't hear your question.
okay, yeah. Let me repeat the question.
No,
So-
that's okay. Let's move to another one then.
And that's what's happened in some of our scientific institutions. And we've created a unaccountable, untouched, who watches the watchers shadow system in the United States government, who clearly have done what they want to do unconstitutionally to control things beyond the democratic processes. So if people don't trust science, yes, there's widespread ignorance, the internet's not helping, but some of that is because of mistakes made by scientists. Scientists speaking about things in which they're not qualified are clearly not speaking about things out of fear or political pressure or for payouts or because they want celebrity. On and on and on. And these people increasingly are disconnected from people who work 60 hours a week, third shifts, work on a farm, work construction, work retail. Now here's the key point, I think, for people like me and you, just normal people. One is it's important to remember the humanity of people who aren't like us. I'm a Christian, so I think it's important to remember that I'm to love my neighbor and also to love my enemies, those who pit themselves against what I am firmly convinced is right, and maybe see themselves as our betters. I'm still to love that person and want the best for them when I can. But another point is I think it's important for you and me, regular people, to remember that these are human beings too. They're not gods on Mount Olympus. They don't all have their lives together. Just because they have more money or influence or fame, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily good people. Some scientists do tremendous work. Others feed into ideology and their own political agendas. In this divided, fragmented age in which we live, it's important for you and me to keep that in mind. And here's where I think the rubber really meets the road. People in Hollywood, New York, the music industry, they have louder voices than you do. They have louder voices than I do. And while they claim to be on your side, so often it seems that they're so totally disconnected, saying that they're on the side of the common person, the poor, and yet they're telling you that you need to turn the heat down in your house in the winter while they own 3 multi-million-dollar mansions and take private jets. These are human beings, not gods. But you and I do have a voice. And so what I'd like to say is this. One day, those people will give an account for their lives. But so will I. So will you.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
The things that we do in this life, whether trying to live in accordance with what is good and right and decent and virtuous, are actively pitting ourselves against those things, making excuses for ourselves because we don't have the opportunities that the elites do. That shows who we really are, who we're really striving to be. And when we stand before God, by His grace, I want to offer Him a life well lived. So while the elites don't always use their voice well in media, on MSNBC, on CBS, on ABC, I've been so disappointed. The smaller voice that you and I have on social media, with our families, our children, our neighbors, and places that really matter to real people, we need to use that voice well. Encourage others when we can, stand for what's right with charity. So if all of us watched what we said and lived virtuously and tried to live decently, it would change things. Things in some way, slowly over time, would get better. But that, my friends, is why people are no longer trusting the elite classes like we did 20 years ago. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you know, rich or poor, educated, uneducated, no matter what you're going through, I hope you know that your life matters. Someone somewhere does love you, so please take care of yourself. Remember that there's always hope and that life is worth living. As always, I thank you for watching. God bless.